everybody, welcome back. Today we are going to be making a skeleton set of little cups. There are actually 4 pieces in this set, and they're all based off anatomy because I'm an anatomy nerd. So I'm going to show you how to throw these pieces first by using these dimensions that are a little bit bigger than these examples that I have here, and they are going to be 3 inches wide and 2.5 inches tall for the first one, 3 inches tall for the second one, 3.5 inches tall for the third one, and 4.5 inches tall for the fourth one. Each one is going to have a foot that is 1/4 inch in from both sides and 1/2 inch down, and that's included in the total height that I just gave you. So I'm starting off with a mound of clay. This is probably 2.5–3 pounds, I would guess, by looking at it. I did not measure it myself, and I'm going to throw off the hump all of my dimensions that I need. For this project, you're going to want a ruler to double check some of your measurements and a pair of calipers. For the calipers, I'm just setting them to 3 inches so that I can measure the tops of all of my cups. And for the ruler, I'm going to be measuring the heights. You're also, of course, going to want your wire cutters to take off each piece, your rib tool to help you through, and your other wooden knife tool to do your undercuts, as well as your sponge for your buckets, and don't forget to sanitize both your vat and your buckets.
Next level.
The way that I check to see if my pieces are centered is by taking one clean finger and running it from one side all the way up to the center. If my finger doesn't move like this in any parts, it's centered. If my finger does move like this in any parts, then that part of the mound is where I need to focus my intentional pushing and compression the next time that I try to center. So right now it feels centered, so I'm going to separate out a piece of clay that I think I'm going to need for my first piece. Now my first one's dimensions are 3 inches by 2.5 inches. The last 1/2 inch is going to be just solid clay for the foot, so I really only want 2 inches down inside the cup. And I point this out because you do still want a little bit of clay at the bottom for your foot that will then interlock into the next set of cups. So I'm gonna section out a piece of clay here from the mound. Don't forget to compress with your sponge. Check it with my calipers, needs to be a little bit wider. And check the depth of my hole so far. It's only 1 inch, so I need an extra inch. I'll probably bring this down a little bit more because I underestimated how much I would need. Bringing the sides up now. Once again, compressing the bottom. Let's see our height now. And it is almost exactly at 2 inches, so I'm just going to do one more pull and probably bring it out a little bit wider. Yep, very so slightly wider. Remember, you want to keep this as a cylindrical shape. This does not need any curves or extra shaping. The silhouette is going to be plain because you're going to have a lot going on the surface. This is perfectly 3 inches. And it's a little higher than 2 inches, but that's okay because I'll probably trim a little bit off the top and bring this even farther down. I'll probably press down first to get that piece farther. Alright, so that looks pretty cylindrical. Let me just recheck that it is still 3 inches. Yep, looks good. The bottom should be 1/2 inch. I'll actually keep a little bit extra on the bottom just in case. And use my rib tool upside down to make sure that it's perfectly straight up. Beautiful. Now you'll probably want to leave your walls a little bit thicker than I have. I tend to be very thin with my walls, which actually doesn't come in handy with this project as much because it leaves a lot of wiggle room. That is 1 cylinder down, 3 to go.
Next level.
Okay, so now I have all of my pieces leather hard. So as I trim these, I'm going to go 1/2 inch down or so and about 1/4 inch in on all of these. Just a simple straight up and down foot. I'm also going to bring in the foot a little bit in the center as well. And before I do each of these feet, I'm going to check the inside to make sure I know exactly how far down this cup goes before flipping it over and doing my trimming. So I decided to actually switch the 3.5 with the 3-inch cup so that the hips are smaller than the rib cage, because anatomically that just makes more sense. So make sure and wrap your clay really well. You still want it to be leather hard as it is right now post trimming. And let's move on to adding your skeleton. Along with this video, your instructor will provide you with an option to choose from 3 skeletons. Of course, you can print out your own, but these skeletons have an outside layer that is fully black and an inside layer that is just a skeleton. Now, since these skeletons are small on a regular piece of paper, you can tell us which skeleton you'd like to use, and we will print it out for you on a full sheet of paper. This full sheet of paper will accommodate the length of your project, and the head will start at the top with the little cup and end at the bottom with the larger cup for the knees. To trace your skeleton, you will lay your paper over your cups and use a needle tool to outline the basic shape of your skeleton. When you're outlining your skeleton through the paper, you want to make sure and press really hard. You don't have to tear through the paper, but you want to press enough to make an indent into the clay below your needle tool and below the paper. Now, you can do more than just the basic shape if you would like to. I tend to freehand a lot of things, so I'm really just going to use the black outline of my skeleton to etch into my surface. If you don't feel like you can freehand the skeleton within the outline, you can also use this method to give yourself a general shape of your skeleton within the black outline as well. Now that I've finished doing my outline, as you can see in this smaller cup, it's very faint, so I'm going to go back over those lines and make sure that they are really ingrained into my surface, and then fill it in with the rest of the skeleton body parts. A big thing you should keep track of is the connections between your cups and those outlining lines. As you can see here, the neck is going to connect to the shoulders, and I have to make sure that those matching lines at the bottom of the top cup and the top of the second cup are aligned. So now you can see as I'm starting to fill in my skeleton, I am paying close attention to where my skeleton ends on one cup and where it begins on the next one. Just as you want your darker areas to match up to one another on each cup, you also want your skeleton to match up as well. You don't want to have a disproportionate skeleton that looks like it came from 5 different bodies. And once you have your skeleton body down, you can go back in with a trimming tool, a small one, and carve out those black areas around the skeleton. These are going to be recessed, and this is also where a lot of your underglaze is going to sit. This is the time also when being tedious and enjoying doing small, tiny details comes into handy, and as I particularly like to do these things, I recognize that it's not everybody's jam, so best of luck to those that are not OCD, and have a lot of fun for those that are. Now here I am checking to make sure everything aligns, and it looks really good to me, so I'm going to go back in, and I just like to add a few little accent lines around my skeleton pieces, not necessarily connecting from top to bottom, but just to give kind of vibration, kind of mood to my skeleton. This is definitely optional, you do not have to do this, but if you do, I think it looks pretty cool. So all of the pieces have now come out of the bisque fire. As you can see, they fit together pretty much perfectly, and now we're going to do the next step, which is underglazing all along the recessed parts that we carved into. I'm going to be using black, and I suggest you also do too. Remember that you have to ask staff to grab the black underglaze for you, and using the tip of your brush, start filling in all the details around your bones. As with all other times that you use underglaze, you're going to want to do this 3 times on each layer. Seems tedious, I know, but the results are absolutely worth it when you have a nice, clean, crisp color on these pieces. I would also suggest that any bottom meeting parts be traced with a thin line of black underglaze as well, so that when it's stacked, it looks like it's very consistently black all the way down to the next piece. If you find your underglaze bleeding onto parts of the skeleton that you don't want to be black, don't worry. Now that my underglaze is completely dry, I'm going to take a little tiny bit of water and rub that excess glaze off of and also kind of into the skeleton so that it has some dimensionality. You can do this as much or as little as you'd like. I suggest making sure that when you glaze these pieces, the lines around the body are very crisp to begin with so that you don't have to clean them up. Since we are going to be waxing over these skeleton parts, you are going to be able to see around the edges. I prefer more of the grungy look, so I am letting some of this black underglaze stay on here and actually purposefully rubbing it in a little bit more so that when I'm done, you can see there's a little bit more dimension and texture to the skeleton while still retaining the details in it. So now that it's been bisque fired, my pieces will not move any of this underglaze anywhere else on the body piece. You can see that I did smear some of the underglaze around the body to give it a more textured effect. That's up to you whether you want to do that, but now we're going to move on to glazing. So I'm going to do my skull head first. I take a little bit of wax and I just lay it down on top of my piece. I do like to apply my wax very thickly, especially where there's these little details where glaze may still capture itself. And you'll see after I dip it, there will be some glaze still holding on to where it's waxed that I'll have to then brush off or pick out. So I went ahead and added an extra layer of wax into all of the creases and all of the detailed areas, because I found that whenever I dip these pieces after waxing them, that the glaze still tries to pull into all of the cracks, and then I have to go back in with a little skewer and rub them out. So also make sure you have a skewer. And for the glaze, I'm going to use Umpire Black with Crimson Translucent over it. So I'm gonna dip it in Umpire Black first. Remember only to hold just like 2 seconds, 2 counts, and then I'm going to let it dry and then dip it again in crimson, and then I'll show you guys how it comes out after that. So now I've double dipped all of my pieces and moved away some of the glaze that pooled on the pieces themselves within the black underglaze area that I previously waxed. Sometimes it'll pool between small divots like these ribs. You will have a little bit of residue left from the glaze, but you don't have to worry about that too much, because as the wax burns off, so will that glaze and come right off. After I go through all of these pieces with my skewer, I then come back with a small brush and move the last little bits and flecks of that glaze off of my piece. But we're gonna come back in now, and using your small brush that you use to dust all these bits away, you're going to add some Rio to the bottom of your piece, and this is optional. I like to do this because it gives it a more finished look, and fired at cone 6, it has a darker maroonish red color that I think will go really nicely with the 2 layers that I applied. So first we have to wipe off all of this rim from all of that extra glaze. So you should have a container, your own sponge, your own brushes, and you can use this Rio wash that we have here at the studio by asking one of the staff members to get it for you. So now I've gone ahead and cleaned up all of my bottoms, and I'm going to apply the red iron oxide. Make sure and stir your Rio really well, because as you can see right here, it's a lot thinner than it is on that first swipe. And be very careful, because this stuff tends to run a whole lot. You can do a couple of layers of this if you want it to be really thick and dark, but it's not entirely necessary if you just want a little bit of hint of color. So now all of my pieces are glazed. I have them upside down so that the bottoms can dry, and I'm gonna fire them to cone 6. So here are my completed pieces. I really love how they came out. Unfortunately, the cone 6 did not turn as purple as I really wanted to, but it did seem to pull into the tone that I wanted beneath the cup around the foot. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have fun making your spooky little seasonal skeletons, and we will see you next week.